Hi again, everybody. This is Christie Rufino, the president and founder of the Dynamic Professional Women's Network and the creator of the Overcoming Mediocrity series of books. And oh my gosh, I am so stressed today. We had our Facebook Live, and maybe you guys were on there. And I've had Comcast issues all week, so much so that most of my lives that I've been doing all week, I've been doing with my cellular data because Comcast, my internet connection just wasn't able to keep a signal long enough to have reliable uh, feeds of Facebook Live feed. So we made it through. We've got one more day. I'm going to be doing my live tomorrow remotely, and that should wrap up this training. But what I am doing now is I am actually recording this for you, and I'm going to go ahead and post it on my blog that will house all of the different trainings. And even if you saw my Facebook one, I didn't get through the whole thing, so I'm going to actually start from scratch. But first, I want to review just briefly what we've covered so far, because the goal of this training is to help you stop chasing and start attracting clients, and to do that by leveraging your personal power story. But first of all, you have to understand why we're doing that. You have to really understand, all the benefits of being able to leverage your story. So I went through some powerful outcomes, and we actually, for that, talked about the industry buzz that you'll create, how you'll be able to attract and keep a loyal tribe of clients and future clients. We talked about the credibility factor, how it will be supporting others, and finally, the impact you're going to be making by helping more people through the use of your story. Then that was the first thing that we talked about, is the why, and then we talked next about the how. And we actually specifically went over the 4 Ps, some of the 4 Ps of how you can craft and leverage your killer personal power story. We talked about purge, that first step on how you kind of come up with the best story by purging everything out of your head and kind of detaching a little bit and looking at all of your stories from a different perspective. We talked about the purpose and the promise. And today we're going to be going over the proof step, which is the 4th P. And the proof is, this is the meat and potatoes step. This is where we're actually going to go through how you're going to put your story together, because your story is actually your proof. It's your living testimonial. It's your irrefutable story proof of why you are an expert at what you do, how you got there, and how you can help your clients better than anybody else. Because what differentiates you and your business is not your products and services, it's you. How you are the person that is the name of your brand or your business. Even if you work for another company, your clients want that connection with you. And so your story is a great way to make that happen. So there are various ways that you can actually leverage your story once you kind of figure out what it is. And 2 of them are through talking. One of them would be is by doing your infomercial. When you're out networking, you've got to have that elevator pitch down, and it should necessarily, you should incorporate your story into that. And the other way is to be able to prepare your signature speech, how you can get out and talk to big crowds about your story and wrapping it all around your mission, your goal, what you're trying to accomplish by sharing your story, which we talked about. And then the other way for you to share your story, it sounds like there's some chaos going on around here, but the other way for you to share your story is in the written form, and that would be on your website, on the about section of your site, social media profiles, your signature, brochures. Sharing your story in a book is really a great way, but we don't always have the capacity, the time, the energy, the money to do your own book, nor do you may not even have enough of a relative content to write a full book that is written in a way that's going to engage the reader through the whole book. So one of the things that I believe could be really should be incorporated into every business person is to put together a smaller version of their story and utilizing it. It could be just pieces that will go out in the newsletter. It could be a little pamphlet you create. But the purpose is to allow your clients and your prospects to have that opportunity to get to know you on a deeper level than they would have otherwise. And I know we've already talked about that, so let's go ahead and dive right into putting together your story in a smaller version. What we've done with our Overcoming Mediocrity books is every author has a chapter in this book, and they utilize that chapter in whatever manner best suits them based on their goal. Kind of like the Chicken Soup for the Soul book, but it's more of a collaborative effort of all of these different women that are joining together to share their story and help a lot of people. So as we put our story together, you think about the various structures of crafting a story, and there are really a lot of them. And I'm not a writing coach. I'm heck not even a writer. I'm more of the marketer and the idea person. But we're going to focus on a very, very simple structure for your story. And I'm going to add a little extra component to it, because the typical structure would be the setup, the conflict, and the resolution, which are all great. But I want to add the lesson, because one of the things that I'm kind of known for is always creating action steps with whatever we do, whether it's in our organization, the Dynamic Professional Women's Network. We've got a referral action plan. It's an actual step-by-step kind of a cheat sheet that we use when we're getting to know somebody or when somebody's doing their presentation, that allows us to go home from that meeting and actually have steps to follow to ensure we can find referrals for that person. Even when I coach the women that are sharing their stories in one of our books, we talk about their stories, and then we go to the lesson, because we want to make sure that there's some value for the reader beyond just being impressed by that story. We want them to be more equipped and empowered to learn from you, to kind of have tools now in their toolbox, so they can either not go through what you went through, or go through what you went through faster, or help other people that may be going through what you've gone through. So the first step we're going to talk about is the setup. And this is where we're going to introduce the reader to the character. And of course, the character is you. And this is your small section where you're going to share a little bit about who you are. Our goal for this is to be able to create rapport with the reader. And you want to do that in a way that they're going to really be drawn into who you are as a person. So there are a few ways that you can do that. You can definitely do that by sharing some stories, or sharing parts of your stories that are funny, parts that make you vulnerable. We really need to talk about things that will make you likable to the reader. And then once we kind of get that set up, so hopefully you have a pen and paper, because we're going to need to take a little notes. Jot down a few different words that will really describe you, your personality, just personal things about you that will really help you kind of describe who you are as you're writing your story. Then the next step will be the conflict. Now, we've already talked about our promise and our purpose. So we should have an idea of what that conflict is going to be, because we're not going to take all of our story, we're not taking all of our history, we're going to take one specific part of our life and utilize that to share. So whatever that conflict is, we really want to recognize the fact that this needs to be a journey when you share your story that allows them to get to know you. And then the anticipation builds as you're getting to that conflict. So you're going to talk a little bit about the events that lead up to that conflict. And then you're going to be in that conflict, and you're going to really build that tension. So when you're talking about the conflict, though, your readers are going to really feel the pain that you're feeling or feel the struggle that you're going through, and you really want to connect with their emotions in a way that they're going to be completely drawn in and completely on your side. Because we have to remember that people generally will take action based off of pain, not off of pleasure. And that happens, that's just happens so often in life. We may want to, say, lose weight because we want to have that great feeling of fitting into our awesome pair of jeans and rocking them out and not having that little muffin top. And so that pleasure is a motivator, but it won't generally give us the amount of motivation as pain would give you. And so say that there was a situation where you had to lose the weight. There was no option, because otherwise it would cause you a lot of pain, or you were in a lot of pain and you had to lose the weight because you wanted that pain alleviated. That is a huge motivator. So keep that in mind when you're sharing your story. And we want to share about the pain, but we don't want to share it so deep and so long that it becomes depressing. So we want to touch on that pain just long enough that that reader is going to really connect with you. And then we need to jump out of that and get to the resolution. So that is when we solve the problem, or the problem is solved. And that is when we come out on the other side and we become a better person. And then the final step after the resolution is the lesson. And that is the teachable part. This is where you'll recap a little bit about what you went through, maybe give some tips, like 3 tips of how they can get through the similar pain. When we're going to share our story in a application like this, we want to make sure that we're delivering value. We want to make sure that that reader, or all of the readers, are going to not only end your story with those warm fuzzies, but end it actually with the empowered knowledge of what you learned along the way. So there's other things you can do, but however you want to, it really depends on your story, but you want to make sure that you've got some tangible value points that you're providing your reader as you're wrapping up your story and you're going into the lesson portion. And so really that's it. So there's not a lot that has to be put together. You want to make it as simple as possible. You want to make sure that you keep your story, that it's written in first person, so you keep the whole thing consistently throughout the whole writing in first person. You want to keep it so simple, meaning you want to have it be short and powerful. Sometimes the longer we have to share something, sometimes it tends to be less impactful, because we can, think about it. How long is our attention span these days? It's very short. So the shorter you can keep your story, shorter you can keep your infomercial, the shorter you can keep your signature speech and have the most impact. Shorter you can keep it with the same amount of content and getting rid of all that fluff will allow you to have the biggest impact. So hopefully that makes sense. You want to use simple vocabulary and grammar. You don't want to have a lot of complex phrases and concepts. You want to kind of write it as if it's a 3rd grade level. That's really important. And I've read that over and over again when I've kind of done some writing research as I've been putting my stories together and helping my authors. Is you want to keep your story written at a 3rd grade level, so it's super simple. Somebody has to stop and question what a word is. They're not necessarily going to think you're really smart. What's going to happen is it's going to really throw them off kilter, and you're going to distract them. So you definitely don't want to be throwing out words that are difficult or complex. When you're sharing your story, you want to be vulnerable. You want to keep it real, be really transparent, and definitely be honest about everything in it. You do want to go through your struggles, but you still want to keep it positive in some way. You want to be able to end up positive, and when you are in the deep despair of your obstacle, you don't want to, as I said earlier, hang out there too long. The point is to go so deep with how you felt during that time that they can actually feel it. but you don't want them to feel it too long to the point where they start getting really bummed out. When you're sharing your story, you want to use words that are simple but yet bring your story to life. You want to use colorful words if at all possible. You want to be able to appeal to as many of their senses as possible. So when you're talking about something specifically and you're really getting into the details of that moment, if you can just bring out, now, of course, not every moment of your story, but when you're getting to the feeling part where you want them to really come with you on that journey, if you can throw out a little piece of, what the smells were like and what you heard and how you felt, or if you touched something, what it felt like, as many of their senses that you can appeal to, that will really capture their attention a little bit further. And then a bonus tip as you're putting your story together is, now sometimes it's hard in a 2,000-word story, so it really depends on the length of your piece that you're creating. But if you can have stories within your story, that is a bonus. And then especially in business, if your stories within your story are including your clients, if they're about your customers, or if they're about great experiences or great results you've given your clients, that is a huge bonus. That's an added testimonial. So I will share with you, and before I move on, I actually have a lot of additional tips in my 6-step story creation guide that I actually have free on, I believe, my publishing website. So you should be able to find that there to download. But I want to share a story within my story. So I mentioned, I think in day 2, that I wanted to share a little bit about my story. And I'm going to do it really quickly because I know, like I just said, that sometimes the shorter the stories, the more powerful they can be. But I was led on a journey to start a women's networking organization that has turned out to be an incredible experience for me. 12 years later now, we have, I think, 18 different chapters in 3 states. But 5 years ago, I was asked to share my story in a book like this. And it was so great that I decided to create a similar experience for the members of our organization. And we're all professional businesswomen. We all kind of value our resources. And I, throughout our various books, have found additional ways to allow our authors to get more exposure and get more attention and to collaborate more and just to get more results from their endeavor in being an author. Because it shouldn't be a business, this shouldn't be an expense. This should be looked at as an investment in your business, and there should definitely be an ROI on this. So I will share one story, and oh gosh, and I wish I had that book handy, but Tiffany Hinton, she has branded herself as the gluten-free mom, and she was in our very first book, and she did have a couple other recipe books at that time, but her story in our book was all about her journey with her health and how she learned to educate herself on food and lifestyle and taking care of her body in a way that allowed her to overcome infertility. And she had been told by years that she could never have children, and she didn't want to let that story define her. She was really dedicated to figuring out a solution and being able to have a family. So she did. And that was the story that she shared in that very first book. And that was a journey that she took that she wanted to share with the readers. And since then, she's continued to go on to build her brand even larger as the gluten-free mom and a health coach. Not sure if it's health lifestyle coach. I'm not exactly sure how she's branding herself, but she travels all over I wouldn't say world, but all over the United States, I know for sure, doing expos. And she has children, so that's a great thing. So she did go on to have children, which is great because they're part of her branding. She's got videos and pictures of the kids the kids cooking with her and baking with her, and they're in her cookbooks and everything. So that is a story that continues to evolve and get better and better with time. but she's used that story in a way that has allowed her to continue to grow. So that's a great success story of how being in a book like this to create your brand. Before she was in our book, she had a couple of cookbooks, but she didn't really define her brand and include her story in it. And she has, and it's gone on, I think she's, if you look her up on Amazon, she has, I don't know, maybe 11, 12 books now published. So she's really done a great thing, as well as so many of our other women that have been in the book. So definitely a great ROI, and we have a lot of marketing that will help you do that also. But I don't want to go in on that anymore, but that is just one example of a story within a story, because I shared a little bit about my story, and then I went down deeper into talking about Tiffany and her story, and how both of those experiences allowed you, listening to this video, the opportunity to kind of connect with me, learn how I started our Overcoming Mediocrity project, and how one of our authors has created success with it. And if we had time, I could go on and share story after story after of so many of our women that have gone on and are still going on to create further success in their business and their lives by sharing their story. But as I said, I don't want to go on and ramble too much, but I will go ahead and wrap this up and look forward to our next Facebook Live, which is either going to happen tomorrow, depending on when you watch this video, or it will be on the page below for you to go ahead and just advance to that next video and learn more about the how you share your story. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow, is just a few ways that you can get your story out there. So it's the fifth step of the how to share your story. So the fifth step of, let's see, the 5 P's of crafting and leveraging your killer personal power story. And then tomorrow we're going to talk about how to promote it. So that's the fifth step of the how, is how to promote yourself and promote your story. So hopefully you enjoyed this and found it valuable. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and have an awesome rest of the day. Bye-bye.